Most hardcore. Some of them talk, but lacking in character. How can I relax when it's theft of innocence? The harmless are broken. Oh, what tragedy to meet death with the lost word unspoken. Hide it behind the foundations. Charity constructed house of euthanasia. Architects of house of cards remain hidden behind one noble cause. Extravagant facade masquerading as God. I don't buy it at all. I like the real thing raw. I tell the whole veil off. The lights on or off. I get mine either way. The stellar man in effect. I'll leave you free and breathless like true psychedelic acceptance. Worldview becomes transcendent. This midnight smoke is so high octane, paralyzing the presence. Hello everyone, and welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the most hardcore news show on earth. I am your host Conrad Brogers, welcoming you to episode 54 of This Week in Tyranny. Today is Friday, December 15th, 2023. You can catch this show on my channel, of course, on YouTube. Truthandlaw.com is my website. And also I'm on the OneGreatWorkNetwork.com. So OneGreatWorkNetwork.com for now. And this week's episode will be about the COP28 summit in Dubai. The COP summit is the Conference of the Parties, is the name of it. Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the full name. So this is a climate summit, a climate conference in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, that ended this past week. It was a 2-week conference from November 30th to December 12th. So this past week it just ended. And basically it's going to be a circus. We're going to see some stuff today. It's ridiculous. I'll go through a bit. I'll play some footage and I'll talk about it all, about what really went on here and what goes on at meetings like this. And really this one specifically, you'll see it with your own eyes. You'll hear it with your own ears. This is what I've been saying on this show. This is what's going on. And I don't mean to belabor the climate point. I don't mean to become like a climate change show. But this is the big deal now. The pandemic didn't work. Climate change is the new thing. This is what they're going with now. So this summit, right? This Conference of the Parties, COP28 summit. The president that was chosen for this summit is Sultan Al Jaber. The president, the guy who's in charge of the conference, the guy leading the conference. Remember, this is a conference about fossil fuels. It's about carbon neutrality. It's about renewable energy. It's about the end of fossil fuels. The CEO of the summit is the president of the summit is the CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, the world's 12th largest oil producer by production, 12th largest in the world. The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company is actually one of the few companies in the world to make a substantial investment to increase their production amid growing pressure to reduce output due to climate change. So all the companies in the United States, all throughout the world, they're actually reducing their production because of the effort. Hey, climate change, you don't want to be a greenhouse gas producer, do you? But apparently, Mr. Al Jaber over here, the memo did not reach him, right? Because they're increasing their production. So why? Why is this happening? Why is Abu Dhabi and the UAE experiencing such a boom of wealth? You know, Abu Dhabi now hosts the biggest UFC fights. Qatar just had the World Cup. Neymar and Ronaldo, the biggest stars in soccer, went to go play in the Middle East now. Saudi Arabia just hosted the fight Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou, like the biggest boxing fight, Clash of the Titans boxing fight. The Middle East is getting all of these big events now. Why is that going on? The celebrity boxing, even Jake and Logan Paul are over there. What's up with this? Well, it's the industrial Middle East being allowed to produce. They got the green light. They got the green light from the collectivists. The globalists have turned off the valve on the Middle East. So they can produce everything. They can make use of all of their resources the way the United States used to. And this is the reason the United States became the richest, most powerful nation on earth, and the leader really of an unprecedented increase in the standard of life. The United States of America did that because of their successful revolution and partially successful establishing of a government that actually respects individual rights. Partially successful. But the Middle East, now, they can produce, without any regulations at the moment. And the purpose of this is redistribution of wealth and power. This is the main goal here. And the ultimate purpose of it, the last stop of this, is to destroy the West, specifically America. Why? Because America is the only threat to collectivism, globalism, communism, call it what you want to. The main threat is America. Because here in this land, there's no central religion. There's no slave mentality to government. There's no respect for tradition just because of tradition. There's respect for tradition that makes sense here, right? But there is no slave mentality, and there is no love of suffering and mediocrity. America as a nation still, for the most part, barring the cities, barring like the West Coast and really the big cities like where I live, Chicago. But even here, if you just get outside that university type inner city, if you just get on the outskirts of the city, for the most part, even the people in here who are brainwashed, they don't have a love of suffering and mediocrity. They love the good things in life. They love the idea of having a chance and struggling to make something of yourself. This is an American thing. This is what they want to destroy. So this is why the Middle East is being allowed to produce and get wealthy, because it's all about redistribution of wealth. So we're not going to have all of that prosperity over here. We're going to outsource that now to a place that has Islam tightly controlling the entire society, and a place that ultimately will sell its people out to the international bankers, and essentially they don't have such a grasp of morality here. Everybody says the West is immoral, right? Everybody is saying now, everybody shakes their finger at America for being demoralized, not knowing that we still have the greatest morality in all of human history here. Just read the Declaration of Independence. Now, I'm going to play 2 videos, basically will make up my episode. I'm going to play a video from the beginning, right at the beginning of the conference, and right at the end, the actual conclusion of the conference. So this one was on December 1st. It's a little fireside chat. It's got a nice little room. Just 2 guys, just 2 people, 3 people just talking, and in front of a few people watching. And innocent, nothing going on here. Except it's Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, and Ajay Banga, the president of the World Bank, who, by the way, is the former president and CEO of MasterCard. This is a credit card CEO who just happens to find his way into a position of the World Bank, So who are they that are going to have this nice little friendly chat? Well, the IMF, first let's talk about what the IMF is, right? The IMF is a financial agency of the United Nations. Most people don't understand what the IMF is. It's an actual fund. It's essentially a pool of money that all the member nations, the 190 of them, can draw from that fund in a time of financial need, like if the country couldn't pay back its loans. And if you ask, where does the IMF get this money? What is this? Where is that pool of money coming from? Who contributes? It's from contributions of the nations. Who contributes the most? It's all of these nations, like not the United States. It's Germany, it's Italy, the United Kingdom, Denmark. It happens to be the biggest, the most socialist nations actually. So all of these Western nations are paying the IMF, throwing their money into this fund. And now you have other member nations who obviously are not, who are developing nations, who aren't contributing any money, but if something were to happen, they will take the money out of this fund. In other words, if Somalia can no longer pay its debt, they're a member nation, they can no longer pay the debt to the international bankers. That $1 trillion fund, much of which was paid by you from your taxes, it's going to go to Somalia. Now that's what the IMF is in the business of doing, right? Now the World Bank, what do? They're an international financial institution that provides loans and grants to the governments of low and middle income countries, right, for the purpose of pursuing capital projects. So in other words, they lend money to governments of developing nations, aka third world nations. And this is what I just mentioned about redistributing wealth from the West, from the West into the third world. So now I'm going to let you hear it from them, what they talk about, and I'll talk about what they talk about.
We are a huge proponent of carbon price. We believe that carbon price has the potential of raising revenues in a way that is both equitable, because the more you consume, the more you pollute, the more you pay. And it is also an incentive to accelerate decarbonization. In other words, you would need less money because of consumption and production adapting to it. Secondly, we are finally at the cusp of moving towards private-public money genuinely giving us the impact that is necessary. No more blended finance is a term. It is a reality. And you would hear people talking about various instruments in that regard. And the third source of financing, frankly, is countries being more disciplined in collecting taxes from their businesses and their people. When we look at tax collection today, in many developing countries, it is below 15% tax to GDP, which we think is the minimum you need to function. And even when it is 20, 22, 23%, our analysis shows that there is space by improving tax collection, especially put it on digital, nobody can hide, collect it, but also be more aggressive towards taxing those that today are avoiding taxation.
Yeah, and that was Kristalina Georgieva talking about how to get the money, because they need to get the money somehow for all the stuff they're doing, and she loves carbon price. So the carbon tax is real. Like, people used to think this wasn't a thing; it was a conspiracy theory. Now you've got people openly talking about the carbon price, talking about it as if it's theirs to decide. Remember, this isn't somebody, they don't have some sort of regulatory power. These are just bankers. These are money people talking about how they're going to increase the price of something that they really know nothing about. These aren't like scientists. These aren't people that really have studied this or made it their life's goal. It's nothing like that. They're talking about a money game, right? So they're going to get it from carbon price, right? That's their main thing. And also she talks about private and public money, getting both of it, which means what? Which means they get it from donors and governments. And you don't know about this, but they just told you. We didn't know about this, but they just told us your country is paying them. So they're getting public money. You don't know that you're paying it, but they're giving that money to them. And when they say private money, talking about donors, well, that's the kind of money that funnels its way around. They have all these associations, all these connections, and ultimately much of that money is coming from you as well, from the higher prices or the governments directly. That's the second way. And then the third way is taxes, of course. telling you again that your tax money is what pays them. And she actually talks about now you have 15% of their GDP is taxed. 15% in most places. She's saying in the developed world. So I don't really know what that figure is exactly. Now, I always say on my shows, you pay about 40% in taxes, and really with all these fees and stuff, you pay about half of what you make in taxes. So keep that in mind, because she's saying 15%, but for you that means like 50, right? Because it's percentage of GDP, and you don't produce. Chances are you're not producing a large percentage of the GDP. So the companies that are getting kickbacks from government, they're paying much less, right, as a percentage. But she's talking about increasing it from 15 to 22 to 23%. 15 to 22 or 23 is a 50% increase. So that means if you pay 40% in taxes now, then you'll pay 60% if they have their way. Now you're really getting into slavery. Now you're getting into hardcore slavery, where you're losing more than half of what you make. You're keeping the scraps. You're getting the leftovers on the plate. You're not even getting half the plate. They're talking about that openly. And increasing taxes, and the quote is, nobody can hide. She actually has the nerve to say this. Nobody can hide. But remember, this isn't a representative of government. This isn't a scientist. This is somebody who finds themselves entitled to tell countries what to do, right? And then those countries tell people what to do with their money. Absolutely frightening. This is crazy. And then Benga, earlier in this talk, he talked about the Climate Loss and Damage Fund. And that's a $400 billion fund to nations that experience climate disasters, right? So you just had the wildfires in Hawaii, things like that. More disasters going on. And ultimately, what's this going to be? It's going to be, like I keep saying, a redistribution of wealth from rich governments to poor governments. And these are grants. These are not loans. They're pledged money, and by the most socialist nations. I was talking about this, about the IMF. It's actually, I was talking about the Climate Loss and Damage Fund. I don't know who gives money to the IMF and how much, but this, I had the list. It's Italy and France over 100 million, and Germany, the UK, and Denmark over 50 million. And like I was saying, these are the most socialist nations. So this is the point of socialism. More controls for you and more money for this crew. This is a clique. Yeah. And it's all about moving money from the developed world to the developing world. And that's collectivism. And the reason they do this is because you need the strong slaves, which is America. You need the strong slaves like me to be doing productive work, to be doing pointless productive work, productive for you, not for them, pointless work that they have less and less to themselves. This is the reason you need to move the money over to these nations that are going to be the recipients of this Climate Loss and Damage Fund. So what they're going to do is they're going to stage disasters in third world countries where they have some kind of a dictator, or they don't have as many regulations. They certainly don't have a citizenry armed with alternative media members trained to recognize government corruption. They don't have people like me over in those countries. So they're going to move the money over to them because it's easier to launder the money there, and it's easier to spread it over there amongst themselves when they're not under the watchful eye of the American people, who still got, some of them have a brain and a pair of eyes that work. That's why they do that. So let us continue. Oh, they talk about the methods now, right? The methods of, how are they going to do this? How are they going to increase this price?
Right, and so the IMF has already shown that it needs to be about $85, at least by 2030. How in the world is actually, I can see that this is going to help, but really we haven't got much hope of getting to $85 a tonne, have we, by 2030, do you think?
Look, it is not going to happen if we give up. That I know. So we have to persevere, and we also have to work with countries so they can make their choice of carbon price. Is it tax? Is it trade? Or is it standards and regulatory compliance that implicitly leads to an increase of carbon price?
Tax, trade, or regulatory compliance. What you just heard right there is criminal conspiracy. That they want a higher carbon price for their interests, and they're talking about how to get governments to pass regulations for a different supposed purpose, when their true purpose is to drive up the price. And that's called fraud, and that's called market manipulation. That's what Georgieva is telling you. You're hearing criminals speak in the open. And here's Benga with some of his rhetoric.
And just remember, climate change, even if we fix renewable energy, we have to figure out agriculture and methane and livestock. We have to figure out construction materials. We have to figure out heavy transportation. And we have to figure out carbon capture. So we shouldn't allow our discussion to only be on one item. Climate is a complicated topic that requires complicated thinking.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
It's not even rhetoric. This is just how liars talk. You see, you notice, it's not just energy, food, construction, transportation, and food. All of these are all the elements of human industry. And those are the necessities of a free society. They're necessities. Like, can we live without skyscrapers and airplanes and container ships and railroads? Yes, we can. We can live without all those things, totally happy, in harmony with nature. And you know, and just live like that. But it would also have to be a world without globalist psychopaths. And so long as we have globalist psychopaths in charge, we're going to have accessible energy, construction, and heavy industry. We have to. And if you try to stop private ownership and try to control what I can do in my own home, you will die. That's simple. So let's not talk about the good of the earth and all of these things that are important. But if I got psychopaths, if I got people that are trying to control my way of life outside my door, I'm not giving up an inch. I'm ready to kill. Okay? I'll tear these motherfuckers to shreds. And I hope you see it like I see it. I'm really not overreacting. I believe it's a tame reaction, really, what I have. I'll tear them to shreds with my bare hands, these people. You know, these two, I don't think they've seen a real man in like 20 years. And I'll show them. And look at it. This is classic liar gangster talk, talking about complicated topic, and it requires complicated thinking. This is how liars talk, because only bullshit stories have to be complicated, not the truth. The truth is simple always. You look at these 54 episodes, they've been really simple. The truth is simple, and they have to make this stuff complicated. It's really not. It has to be complicated to cover up that this is straight up looting. And this is the world government. This is the world government that you people were saying that didn't exist, that all your friends and family were saying didn't exist. Here it is, announcing it. This is your world government. It's actually here. Now, it's here in the open. This is your world government. Now, the governments of the world, like the United States government, the Polish government, the Mexican government, the classic governments that have a flag and a military, they're just buffers for directly interfacing with the public. They're the people who put the gloves on and deal with the trash. Now, these meetings and conventions, this is where the real decisions are made. This is the true government. And they're more public and out in the open today than they have ever been before. This is it. Now, I'm going to go to that final speech. Let's go to the last speech. This is the end of the conference. I caught this by accident. I was driving to work, and I happened to catch this live. So I saw this. And first of all, look at this. Look at this COP president. You know the etymology. It's called the Conference of the Parties, but it says COP. And you know the etymology of the word cop, like a cop, like a police officer? This word is from the Latin capere, which means to seize, snatch, take, or grab. And this is exactly what they're doing. They're straight up looting. They're takers. Capere, C-A-P-E-R-E. This is where you get the word caper from. When somebody plans a caper, they're doing like a mission. They're gonna loot something. Also, the word capture. It comes from capere. That's where you get the word cop from. So this guy is the cop president. He is the president of the takers, of the looters. This is who they are. They're takers and looters. The truth is simple. It's not complicated, and it's right there in front of your eyes. This guy is the head of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. Right? So here's their final speech. This is the closing of the conference. All these people, presidents of the World Bank, head of the IMF, this is their plenary meeting. And this is the final closing speech of the whole conference. And look at this. Look at this. Women and gender. You're gonna hear from representatives of women and gender. And before I play it, I just want to say, what a marginalization of women. That the entire half the world, the beautiful, amazing creature that is the woman, is relegated to this. Women and gender. Women and gender non-governmental organizations. Check it out.
Thank you for your statement. I'd like to give the floor to a representative speaking on behalf of women and gender non-governmental organizations. You have the floor.
We speak today on behalf of the Women and Gender Constituency, representing feminists from across the world and building on the power of the MENA Feminist Task Force, whose voices must be listened to. As movements, we fought hard and continue to fight for the end of the era of the fossil fuels in a just and equitable manner, towards a transition that centers human rights, gender equality, and care. It should not have taken us this many years to call for a transition away from fossil fuels. While critical, this outcome, full of false solutions and dangerous distractions, threatens any hope of keeping 1.5 alive. And this undermines the very survival of people on this planet.
An outcome that does not clearly deliver an end to the extractive system that has been harming, murdering, and destroying lands and bodies across the majority of the world cannot be applauded as delivering gender justice. An outcome that fails to center ambition in implementation and rebuild the essential trust and global solidarity needed for real climate action, with a clear commitment to new and additional grant-based public finance, is an outcome with no equity, no gender equality, and no climate justice. Where is the finance for the just transition? Where is the finance for the new energy package? Where is the finance for the critical global goal on adaptation? Where are the billions, not millions, needed for addressing loss and damage? This is money needed and promised yesterday. Why is there always money for war and never for climate action?
We are deeply committed to dismantling oppression and inequalities perpetuated by militarized, fossil fuel-driven colonial powers, bearing witness to the genocide
we join in solidarity with our allies here to demand a permanent ceasefire now, an end to fossil fuels with a just transition, fast, fair, fully funded, feminist, and forever.
Look at her eyes glued to the screen. You can tell this is not a true passionate speech. And it's not because she's looking at the screen. You can read off the screen. I read off the screen. You can tell that her passion is not true to what she's saying. And when you're fighting for a cause that you believe in, I don't understand how you can give a fake speech. She should be ashamed of herself. And you know what? It makes me angry because I know the results of what she's asking for. She's asking for me to be given orders and ask permission for every little aspect of everyday life. And the result is people being told not to have children, people not allowed to have children. And when you bring children into stuff, you cross the line with me, I'm done. Okay? This second person, the second person who represents gender interests, is much better. They're much better, but infuriating in a different way. Because you could listen, where's the finance? Where are the billions? Where are the billions of dollars? Not millions, billions of dollars. Listen to how demanding it is. That level of hatred, that level of venom in that voice, I take it very seriously. Because this is the kind of thing I raise my voice for. I'll go to town on somebody coming at me like this because what are you asking for? You don't know or understand the real enemy and the real reasons for injustice in this world. And you're asking for someone to force me to bankroll your ignorance while you grovel to the enslavers to deprive me of my livelihood for your purposeless existence. This is people like this. Now, Western men, we seem to just take this shit sitting down. And I find it very hard for me to really get angry at a woman. But shit like this, I'll stand up for some shit like this. Like physically stand up and provide a physical obstacle for this type of bullshit. Because we are just way too soft with this. Because this is an open proclamation of hatred towards you on a level that suggests to me that if you have the opportunity, you're going to stab me in the back, and you don't even know that I am on your side. You don't even get the real enemy, which was my point. And there's a reason they put this at the end. This is placed at the end of the whole conference for a very specific psychological reason. And here it is, because it combines the two things that are the two most effective factors at getting men to compromise and sacrifice. And those two things are a crying child and a nagging woman. And you could take it how you want to, but that's how it is. I'll leave it there. And that's This Week in Tyranny.